All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. I'm excited to talk to you all about inclusivity and diversity. But to start, I wanted to share a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from. So my name is Megan, and I'm from Selections Career Support Services, as Callie mentioned. So we're a nonprofit organization that helps people with barriers and disabilities to, I should say barriers to employment and disabilities find meaningful employment. So I wanted to talk to you today about understanding hiring and employment barriers for people with disabilities and empowering youth with disabilities in the trades. And I'm going to be talking about it from the perspective of a job development specialist. So somebody who works closely with clients with disabilities and barriers while they look for employment. So I'll have some stories from clients and employers and that kind of thing to try to share a little bit about what their experiences have been like. And this will be a two-part webinar. And this first part is going to focus on the hiring process, including like interviews and that kind of thing. And the second part will focus more on inclusivity and diversity once the job has been secured, so in the workplace itself. So I wanted to mention the Accessible Canada Act, which many of you have probably already heard of. With the goal of making Canada barrier-free by 2040. So this is a good reason that companies are starting to talk more about accessibility and inclusion. These kinds of things are kind of becoming like a hot topic, so it's exciting to talk about that with you today. And I really appreciate everybody's interest in this topic, as it's something that's obviously very important to me in the work that I do. So I think it's a really good thing to continue having these conversations about. I want to start by giving you just a brief overview of Selections, just so you have a little bit of background to what I do and what we do as an organization. So as I said before, we are a nonprofit organization, and we support adults and youth of a wide range of ages with a wide range of abilities. So we help them with career exploration, discovering what they want to do, and we help them pursue those goals and those dreams as well. A little bit about our core values. We really focus on being innovative here at Selections and trying different strategies and techniques to support our clients. We try different things to help our clients feel empowered, to feel like they are leading their own journey through our program, so that they feel that they can then advocate to employers and advocate to us as well about what is right for them. So it's really kind of a person-centered approach that's led by the client. And ultimately, our goal is for inclusion in the workplace, inclusion in the community, and in society in general. We want everybody with disabilities and everybody to know that they can meaningfully contribute to our society and that they are a valued person. So here, I wanted to mention the different programs that we have at Selections just briefly, in case anybody is interested or maybe knows somebody who could use a program like this, use an organization like ours. But we have been around for more than 40 years. And so our first program really began in 1989. And this program is called Promoting and Driving Diversity. So this program focuses on helping people 16 or older with developmental disabilities find employment. That program is still around today. So it's had clients that have been in the program for 20 years or longer sometimes. So that's a really good one to offer long-term support. We also have our Employment Support Development Program. That was our next one in 2021. Supports individuals 16 and up with any kind of disability, but that one is not around anymore. In 2022, we had the start of the GRIT, or Get Ready in Trades program, which is the program that I'm from. So I will be kind of talking from that perspective, and I have more details and experience with that kind of thing. So this program is focused on the trades. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that, but I tried to keep things pretty general and not too specific to the trades. So it can be applied to any industry that you are involved in. Then we have Forward in 2023. That is our Willing, Ready, and Determined program for anybody 16 and older looking for any type of employment with any type of disability. And just recently in 24, we had the creation of the CRAFT program. So this is Construction Readiness and Access for Future Tradeswomen. It focuses on helping women in Leduc with barriers to employment get into the construction industry. So I just wanted to kind of spotlight that one a little bit as it's brand new and a lot of people haven't heard of that yet. And then, as I mentioned, I'm from the GRIT program, Get Ready in Trades. So I wanted to mention that we work specifically with youth with disabilities and barriers get into the trades. A little bit of information about the purpose of our program. So there's kind of 4 big reasons. The first one being to provide awareness to youth. So we really want to make sure that today's youth know that trades are a viable option for them. When they're looking to start a career somewhere, maybe they're not sure about what they'd like to do. We really like to educate everybody, youth and otherwise, about the fact that the trades programs are really good options. And because they have the apprenticeship option, there's the ability to make money while you're learning. So it's a really good option that actually a lot of youth today aren't super knowledgeable about. A lot of our youth actually don't know about the apprenticeship program much at all. So we really want to help with that. The second reason being that a lot of our tradespeople are nearing retirement age. And when they retire, we don't have enough people entering the trades to replace them. So we have some worries in Alberta about a labor shortage. So the goal of our program and the reason that the government decided to create it, our federal government, is because we want to help more youth get into the trades to close that gap. We also want to provide financial supports to people wanting to enter the trades because finances can be a big barrier to getting into the trades. And we also want to provide support and also raise awareness and provide education to employers and anybody else interested in hearing more about what it's like to work with people with disabilities, what kind of supports are available for them, more about inclusion, just like we're talking about today, that kind of thing. Just briefly, this is our kind of process that our clients go through when they come into our program. So there's an intake, some training. I wanted to focus on the career exploration a little bit. Often this involves our clients, as we call them, participating in classes. So we're partnered with some unions like CLAC, where our clients get to go and try out different trades, kind of in like short introductory kind of classes. So we do like welding and carpentry and things like that. So this is a huge piece for youth coming out of high school and looking for a job in the trades with no real idea of what it's like to work in the trades. This is a way for them to test it out and see if it's a good fit for them. We also help with job search, job placements, and then we also provide support for about 8 to 12 weeks afterwards. So it's a really good process. I wanted to put this out there in case, again, anybody knows anybody or anybody themselves is interested in something like this. It's a very useful program for anybody with disabilities or barriers of any kind. Eligibility. We just require our participants to be youth, and the government determines youth to be 16 to 30 for the purposes of our program. They have to be ready, willing, and able to work, and they have to self-disclose as having a barrier or disability of some kind. So this doesn't have to be confirmed by a doctor. You just have to be comfortable checking a box that says that you have a barrier or disability of some kind. Legally entitled to work in Canada, never previously registered as an apprentice is one, and able to arrange your own transport, because that's a big part of being ready, willing, and able. Some of the things that we offer to help get our clients ready for trainings involve personal development trainings and pre-employment trainings, which are both offered through our intake specialist here at Selections. So these are our internal trainings. But we also have external trainings, which are often certifications. Some big ones that we do are WMIS, fall protection, confined space, And first aid is a really big one as well. And the purpose of all these trainings and why I wanted to mention them is to kind of help employers feel more comfortable working with some of our clients. We'll talk about this more later, but there's a lot of stigma and assumptions around working with people with disabilities, and safety concerns that some people have about it. And so some things like this can help to mitigate some of those concerns, help employers feel more at ease, but also help our clients be a little bit more prepared and a little bit more qualified for a job site. So I mentioned before that career exploration is a really big part of what we do. And I wanted to mention it to you because this is a really good way for employers or people in the community to kind of get involved with an organization like Selections. If your goal is to increase your inclusivity and diversity and start kind of engaging with the population of people with disabilities, this could be a good way to do it. We work with a lot of community partners to provide classes, like I mentioned, but we also have speakers events where people could come and speak to our clients about what they do, often trades focused, but this picture on the right side of the slide here is a speakers event where I believe a mechanic came and showed all the tools he uses at his job and kind of just explained what a day in the life of a mechanic is like. So this kind of thing is a really good way for us to connect our clients with the community and to kind of increase engagement in that way. So if anybody is ever interested in anything like that, lots of organizations like ours do this kind of thing, and it's a really good way to get involved. We also can offer interview assistance. So I wanted to mention this one because we're going to talk today about making the interview process a little bit more inclusive and accessible to people with disabilities and barriers. And my perspective on this and the tips that I want to share are based on the interview support that I have given my clients during my time with Selections. So something that we offer is an interview support person. So when a client goes to an interview, we will often go with them and provide a little bit of support. This can look like just sitting with them. And, sometimes a barrier to employment could be extreme anxiety. And an interview can be a really scary, really intimidating thing. And so providing interview support like this can be something that allows them to feel comfortable enough to open up a little bit more in an interview and show their best traits. So that's something we can offer. We also have the ability to help with interview clothing and attire if our clients don't have any professional clothing. We have a bit of a budget to help with that. And then also just to give feedback and kind of debrief with clients afterwards about how the interview went so that they can be improving. We also help with job searching. So we network for our clients to try to create connections that can help them. We do some in-person job search with them. We attend career fairs and we help them learn how to apply online using Indeed and other job boards like that. And career fairs are a really big one for us. We support our clients at external career fairs, but I also wanted to mention that we hold our own private career fairs as well. So Selections has smaller, more intimate career fairs for our clients because we know that that is a style of career fair that is better suited for somebody with a disability or a barrier. So it gives us a little bit more control over the environment. It allows us to choose the format of the career fair as well. So often we have our clients sit down with interviewers at career fairs for 15-minute time slots, which allows them to actually kind of warm up, get to know an interviewer, and for the interviewer to get to know them as well, so that they can see past maybe initial assumptions that they might make and that kind of thing, and actually get to know the person a little bit better. Because typically external career fairs are not very inclusive and are not a good environment for a lot of our clients. So this is a way that we've found to make career fairs a little bit more accessible to them and give them better results. And I did want to mention that we are having one of these career fairs on March 6th, next Thursday. And we do have spots open. So if anybody wanted is in a position to attend a career fair like this and wanted a way to kind of get a little bit more inclusive and participate in something like this, I will have my email on the screen a little bit later on. And you could shoot me an email and let me know. We would always love to have new people join. We're always looking for employers, anybody interested in joining something like that. That would be a really great opportunity to get to know some of our clients and kind of dip your toe into interviewing the pool of candidates with disabilities. I also wanted to mention some personal supports that we can offer. So again, I mentioned earlier that finances can be a big barrier to people wanting to get into the trades. So something trade specific, of course, that can kind of exclude people with disabilities from finding a job is the financial barrier. So I wanted to tell you a story about a client that I work with on this slide. So one of my clients recently got a job with an HVAC company. And this client is fresh out of high school, never had a job. So he doesn't have savings and he doesn't have work experience, but he's been trying very hard to find something in the trades for a long time. He finally got this job offer to work at this HVAC company, and they told him his interview was on a Wednesday, and they told him by the following Monday, he would need to have around $1,000 worth of tools and PPE purchased for his start date. So as somebody who hasn't worked before this and has no work experience, which makes it very difficult to get a job, has no savings, that is a huge barrier to beginning to work in the trades. So something that companies can do to be a little bit more inclusive can be to offer kind of like a purchasing plan for tools and that kind of thing in the trades. A lot of places do this already, but you can offer to pay for a portion of the tools for the clients and have deductions taken off of their paychecks over the next little bit, something like that. This client has selections, so we can help him pay for the tools. But without us, as somebody with this barrier, he wouldn't have been able to accept this job. So that's a really big barrier that I wanted to mention. Some of the other things we offer are incentive to employers. So we can offer to reimburse wage for 8 to 12 weeks to give our clients a better shot at finding and maintaining work. We can also support clients on their orientation days or on their first few shifts. And we check in consistently with employers and with clients because we want to make sure everything's going smoothly, everybody's working well together, and if anybody needs support, we're able to offer that. If there are challenges that a client is facing at an organization or at a business, and an employer is not sure how to help them, often the client will be let go. But there is another option for employers to reach out to organizations like ours, who can support the client and who can provide them a little bit of help and help come up with solutions to make the client more successful at their job. So that's a big thing that we do. The purpose of the wage incentive, there's a few different reasons for it that are listed on the screen here. But I wanted to mention a story about an employer that I worked with who came and did a talk to some of our at a speakers event, not to clients, but to some community partners. He spoke specifically about the wage incentive. And he said that as a small business employer, it's really important to him that the numbers make sense and it makes sense financially for him to work with one of our clients who potentially doesn't have all of the experience that are required. And sometimes people feel a little bit intimidated by working with somebody with a disability. But he said that the wage incentive made all the difference for him to be willing to work with one of our clients, because it lets you try out working with one of the clients for a 3-month period at a very low cost to the employer. So if there are any hesitations or concerns, it's a really good way for somebody to try out one of the clients, see if it's a good fit, and often realize that it's not much different from working with anybody else a lot of the time. So that's a really big thing that we can offer and a really important part of our program. And this employer that I mentioned has gone on to hire, I think, 4 of our clients now. So the incentive has really made a huge difference to his business and allowed him to be a very inclusive employer. So building those employer connections is really important to us. We try to do a lot of things like this, where we can speak to the community about what we do. We can talk about inclusivity and diversity, and try to build some connections that can help our clients and build connections so that we can help employers as well, because we want to help everybody we can to generally increase inclusivity and diversity in the community. That's the ultimate goal. So now we're going to move a little bit more specifically into the barriers and maybe some tips and tricks and things like that. So I've identified 3 of the main barriers to hiring inclusively that we have heard from employers at Selections. So we do a lot of outreach. We contact a lot of employers to talk about what we do. And the main reasons that they turn us down are for stigma and assumptions that are made about people with disabilities. A lot of people are intimidated at the idea of working with somebody with a disability because often it's something new, something different. I think a lot of employers feel that they won't be able to properly support somebody with a disability. So it can be kind of intimidating in that way, which can prevent a lot of employers from working with our clients. Another one being workplace accommodations. A lot of employers have assumed that all clients with disabilities are going to require accommodations and that they're going to require expensive accommodations. And this is definitely not the case. So we really want to try to raise awareness about accommodations specifically because they are really very, very often not expensive at all. And just a small change that allows somebody to perform really well at their jobs. And the last one being the safety concerns that I mentioned before about working with somebody with a disability, which we'll talk about a little bit further. So I wanted to include this slide with some real examples of things employers have said to us when we outreach and try to find employer connections for our clients. So some of them are, this environment is harsh and they can't handle it. One is, I don't want to watch over someone like that. The most shocking one to me was, I'm not going to hire those kinds of people. And the last one is, they are a safety hazard on sites and in shops. So the stigma and assumptions made by people are really quite strong, pretty often, and they're not always a conscious thing. Some people have unconscious bias towards people with disabilities because of their personal experiences, and you can't help that, but you can make changes and actively try to overcome this by identifying it when you can tell that you're having those bias and trying to move past it. So that's kind of the goal of our program, is to raise some awareness about this so that people know that the things that they believe about working with people with disabilities are not always true. I wanted to include this statistic. I got this from a study, I think from a year or 2 ago, so it might not be completely accurate today, but at the time, it said 27% of Canadians 15 or older have a disability, and that equals 8 million people in Canada. So the point of this slide being, there are a lot of stigma and assumptions made about people with disabilities, often because a lot of people feel they don't have exposure to people with disabilities. It's something they're unfamiliar with. But based on statistics like this, disabilities are really more prevalent than you might think. Often, people with disabilities are in tons of workplaces and people just don't know because they're not disclosed. So disabilities are more common than people think, and it's about changing our thinking about people with disabilities. That's kind of the goal here. I wanted to include this example. This is kind of a funny story. So one of my clients recently found a job with a cabinet finishing shop, which was his dream job. He loves it there. He's very, very happy. This client has autism spectrum disorder, and he found this job independently. He handed out resumes on his own, and actually went to this place by chance. It was a mistake. He meant to go somewhere else. And after a conversation with this employer, he was hired right away. The client asked me to get involved for a little bit of additional support, so I contacted the employer, and we had several phone calls and several emails discussing what Selections is, what we do, the demographic we serve, and what we offer. And when I finally met the employer in person, I brought him an employer gift box. It's like an appreciation, inclusive employer gift box kind of thing, just to thank them for being an inclusive employer. And the employer looked through the gift box and he was like, wow, this is awesome, but I just don't understand how I'm an inclusive employer. Like, how does hiring this client make me inclusive? And it's just a funny story because he had no idea that the client had a disability at all, even though I mentioned it to him several times. But the point of the story is that he worked with somebody with autism spectrum disorder that I would consider relatively obvious. I don't think that it was hard to see in the client. And he had no idea. So he didn't have the stigma and assumptions that some people have because he couldn't even tell. And it led to him developing a really good relationship with the client. And he says that he hopes that the client works with them for a long time because he does really valuable work and they really, really value and appreciate everything that he does there. So it can be an intimidating thing to work with somebody with a disability if you're unfamiliar with it, but oftentimes it's really no different than working with anybody else, which I think is an important message to share. And how we try to share that message is through educating employers, building relationships with employers. We do things like this to talk to the community, like I mentioned, and we hold some of our own events as well to try to spread the word about this kind of thing. The second misconception that I talked about was based on accommodations and thinking that all people with disabilities require accommodations that are going to be expensive. But I wanted to mention some of these other facts from another study, one being that more than half of people with disabilities in Canada don't require any accommodation at all. And of the people that do require accommodation, 37% of them reported a one-time cost with an average of $500. So a one-time cost of $500 for a very small portion of the population is really not expensive, and it's not as common as you would think. At Selections, we do offer accommodations, or we help work with employers to offer accommodations to clients, but typically they're very cheap accommodations. And in the GRIT program that I'm from specifically, I think the only accommodation we've ever offered was working with an employer to create a flexible work schedule for a client. So really, accommodations are not as common as people think, and they also are typically not as expensive as people think. And typically you can find several accommodations that work for any type of disability, depending on what the issue is and what they need the accommodation for, like whatever they're struggling with. Organizations like ours can help employers come up with solutions that are more cost-effective and better for them as well as the client. So I wanted to give you some examples of some of the accommodations that I have seen from other programs at Selections. One of them being a timer to help clients remember their breaks or remember when their schedule, like when their day is over. And that can be under $20 to get a timer. Or they might have a phone with a timer and they can just use the one that they already have. Another one that I have seen a little bit more frequently would be a task list. So we can work with employers to really understand the job and the different requirements of the job and the different things that they need to get done. We can help them create task lists and give them to our clients to help them stay on track. That's a very small accommodation, definitely under $10, that would allow a client to do their job very well if all they need is a reminder about what jobs that need to get done. The most expensive accommodation that I personally have seen at Selections is an anti-fatigue mat, which you can get for under $50 and can help clients with certain physical disabilities stand for longer if necessary. So point being, they're not always expensive, but they can make a big difference for somebody with a disability. I wanted to give some examples of interview accommodations as well. So things that you could include in your interview process if you wanted to, or employers in general could include, and things that we have done at Selections that have helped. So again, in the middle there, we just have having that interview support person, like I mentioned before. One of them being offering non-virtual interviews if technological skills are not required for the job. I think in this day and age, we're kind of moving towards more Zoom interviews and more virtual interviews, but that's not always the best suited to our clients or to the population of individuals with disabilities in general. And so to be more inclusive, you can offer interviews in a way that works best for the candidates as well. And that might be in person, over the phone. There are lots of different ways that are easier for them that still allow you to learn enough about their qualifications to make a good decision about hiring. And then an interesting one that I wanted to share with you is based on a client that I work with. So this client and I have been working on their interview skills together. When we practice together and I ask him the interview skills or the interview question, out loud, the client struggles and he has a hard time answering the questions. But we found that if I give him a copy of the interview questions and I ask the question out loud and then he reads the question to himself, he has amazing interview answers. So he really just has the ability to understand the questions a lot better if I let him read the questions himself. So this is a very small accommodation, again, that drastically changes his interview performance. And then I wanted to touch on the safety concerns that I mentioned as a barrier before. So something to know about people with disabilities looking to get into trades specifically and that kind of thing. Often when they're involved with a program like Selections, we spend a lot of time getting them safety certifications and safety trainings. So often, our clients especially, compared to other candidates who do not have disabilities or are not associated with a program like ours, often our clients have a higher safety awareness than your average candidate because they spend so much time on these certifications and trainings. But also they participate in the regular safety trainings that any other staff at your organization or business would participate in. And they might need to learn things in a different way than other people, but they're still going to be able to take in the same safety information and keep themselves safe on a job site, just like anyone else. So something that we've noticed is a lot of people choose to go to university and pursue higher education, but for people with disabilities, that's often not an option. And instead, a lot of them choose to go into the trades. But then the tradespeople sometimes have that perspective that somebody with a disability is a safety concern and is not a good fit for a trade site. So if that's the case, we leave a whole group of people with nowhere really to fit in. They don't fit into the university path necessarily, and they don't fit into the trades because of the safety concern. You're leaving out a large group of people. So that's why one of our big goals is to find a way to educate and raise awareness to employers about the value of people with disabilities so that they can find a place that they fit in and belong, where they can do meaningful work. So now I wanted to mention 3 specific sections. So job postings, job applications, and interviews, and some challenges and some success that we've seen in clients with Selections. Starting with job postings. So I added this quote in the middle from a study called "What Job Seekers Really Think About Your Diversity Practices." And the quote says 76% of candidates said that they would consider whether an employer is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion before accepting a job offer. So that just shows that the general attitude of people these days is moving towards really valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and wanting that to be a more common thing probably in all job sites and in all businesses. So if you are an employer, or if you are trying to make your own workplace more inclusive, it's something that is valuable not only to people with disabilities, but to everybody. And I think that's a good thing to know. So one tip that I would have for you, based on how my experiences with clients have gone, would be to make sure that you're using inclusive language in job postings. So if you post a job and you say that the preferred candidate must be able to stand for an entire shift, it's excluding anybody who is not able to stand for an entire shift. So if the job really requires standing, that's okay. But if there is the potential for the client or the candidate to pick a position that works for their body and make it work for them, you can use different wording to include them too. So must be able to remain in one position for an entire shift could be better wording for something like that. Because anybody who can't stand for an entire shift is going to see that job posting and feel like it's not for them. But if they have the ability to maybe do their job sitting for an entire shift, then they would still be qualified for that job. So that's one tip that I've noticed with clients, is that they really notice wording in job postings, and they can definitely feel excluded based on how you word the postings and the requirements. Another is to make sure that any listed requirements are really required for the job. Often, job postings include requirements that are not really necessary for the job, which again can exclude certain people. A big one that we have noticed is job postings saying that they require candidates to have a license, a Class 5 driver's license, and a reliable vehicle. Often, all that's really required is for somebody to get to their job, and to be able to get themselves to and from work independently, and the bus is able to do that. So is it really necessary for them to have a license? If they're going to and from different job sites all day, then maybe it is, and that's a requirement. But for a lot of jobs that are just at one place all day, same place every week, it's not really required for them to have a license. So again, that excludes a large portion of people. Another thing that I've noticed that our clients really value in job postings is an equal employment opportunity statement. So I put an example from Google there, and it's just a statement that helps to make people with disabilities feel welcome to apply for the job, and welcome at that business, at that organization, and it helps clients feel like they're going to be treated fairly there. And I have noticed that a lot of clients will comment on this when we're applying to jobs together. They'll look through and see a job posting that has one of these equal employment opportunity statements, and they get excited about it, and they feel like that's going to be a good fit for them because they mentioned that. So that's a really good way to reach out more to people with disabilities. Talking about job applications. Another way to make this process a little bit more inclusive is, again, to not require them to be done online. Not all people in general are able to use technology, but we have noticed that it is hard for a lot of our clients to use technology. And if they are applying for a job that doesn't require the use of technology, it's unfortunate to eliminate them from applying for that position if the only way for them to apply is through using technology. So if you can give them the option to drop off a resume in person, drop off an application in person, maybe call, do it in some other way, that can make you a lot more inclusive as well. Another one being giving clients or candidates the opportunity to ask for accommodations if they need them. So if in your job application you have a section where they could say if they need an accommodation, that's more welcoming and makes an interview a lot more accessible to clients. In the bottom left, that little picture is to depict not requiring people to disclose information that would lead employers or hiring representatives to feel biased or influenced in some way. For example, something as small as having the date when you graduated high school can lead to people making assumptions about you based on your age. So we found it's more inclusive to not have information that leads to that. If you're somebody who's older and you're trying to find a job, that can be a way that you can get excluded from the running for a job pretty quickly. Another one would be not using a method of application that is too structured. So we've seen a lot of applications where for every question, you only have a drop-down menu option to answer. So if a client doesn't perfectly fit into the options that are given, they're immediately excluded. And there's no way to bypass that. We noticed this at selections. There was a hiring fair that a bunch of our clients wanted to apply to recently. None of them could apply for it because of the drop-down menus. None of them fit into those categories. So all of them missed out on that opportunity because they wouldn't allow us to apply in any other way. So that's really not an inclusive way of accepting job applications. So I would really recommend avoiding that if possible. Another thing being, if you are an organization that attends career fairs, we've noticed that at a lot of career fairs, people have a QR code that candidates could scan and then apply online, but they're not even accepting resumes at the career fair itself. So a lot of people go to career fairs because they find it includes them better to apply in person, and it's a more accessible way to apply for them. So not to accept resumes in that moment is pretty excluding to them. In the interview process, some things that could help would be allowing for reasonable interview accommodations. So again, that could be like the printed interview questions that I mentioned before. That could be having a support person like myself. Making that very open and accessible and being welcoming about accepting offers or people asking for accommodations is a way to make people feel comfortable actually asking for that. Consider using multiple interviewers in your interview process, because this can allow or can be a way to account for bias. So if one person has some sort of bias based on their personal experiences towards the candidate, no matter who they are, a way to combat that would be to have multiple interviewers. And then allowing for various modes of interviews. Again, technology, not the best for a lot of our clients. For a lot of them, it would be better to go to an interview in person, but sometimes maybe you don't have the most inclusive physical space for an interview, and then you might want to consider using a virtual interview instead. So it might be best to see what works for your candidates. Lastly, just to wrap up, I wanted to mention that if you find this kind of topic interesting and something that you want to learn more about, we do at Selections have a conference where we discuss this more. It's upcoming in October, so it's coming up relatively soon, but it would be a really good opportunity for anybody interested to learn more about these topics. We'll have some really great keynote speakers and breakout sessions. So that would be a really good option if anybody is interested. So it's our 3rd annual conference, and I wanted to include this contact information here as well. If you are interested in the conference, we are going to be selling our tickets relatively soon, and we're going to be announcing when they are for sale on our Instagram. So that bottom contact there, Selections Career, is our Instagram, in case anybody is curious or wants a notification when that's ready. But I also included our number, email, website, in case anybody wants any more information. I'll just give you a second if anybody wants to take a picture, write anything down. But this conference is timed to be taking place at the same time as DEAM, which is the Disability Employment Awareness Month. So there'll be a ton of events going on in that month. If you are interested in learning more about this kind of thing, keep an eye out for that. that will be a great time to get some information. And then I also wanted to include, this slide has my email address. So if anybody had questions, were interested in hearing more about what we do, maybe know somebody who would be a good fit for the program, maybe you're an employer and you would like to connect, anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available if you have questions or anything you want to talk about. Maybe you have questions about inclusivity and diversity at your organization. Feel free to reach out. But that kind of wraps up my presentation. I just have my citations next, but we don't need to look at that. If anybody has questions, I would be happy to answer them or talk about anything.
There is one question in the Q&A that I'll read out for you, Megan. But if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. It should be enabled now. Or you can throw it in the Q&A or email it to Megan after. I will send out a follow-up email with her contact information for you. Yeah, so we have a question. How do you envision your organization's tie to the recreation and park sector? Or what services of your organization might you suggest?
Our organization is tied to other organizations like Alberta Parks because, again, that community partner aspect. We always want to be working together with other organizations. So I think that there are always ways that we can help each other. Alberta Parks often needs workers and employees, and we have clients who would really benefit from making a connection with an organization like them and finding some new opportunities to gain some experience and some meaningful work that way. So that is kind of the main tie. I think that we have ties to any organization that we're able to work with in that way. But again, if it's not clients, there's also the aspect of just generally increasing knowledge and awareness of inclusion and diversity and that kind of thing. And I think that you can do that with anybody in any organization, Parks and Rec included, and anywhere else.
For sure, yeah. And I appreciate a lot of the tips and information you gave today being broad. I think it obviously can be applied to every sector out there, including recreation and parks. So I have lots of notes. I hope everyone else found some valuable tips to take away. But I don't see any more questions coming in. So I think with that, if there's no more questions, we can end the session. But I just want to say a really big thank you to Megan and Selections Career Support Services for leading this session for us. It was awesome. I really, really appreciate it. And then just a reminder for everyone that session 2 will be happening in March. So I will send out a follow-up email after this webinar with the information for that and the registration link. And yeah, we hope to see you all there.
Thanks so much, Callie, and thank you everybody for joining. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation and learned something new.
Awesome. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.